So on the front of the home, seeing a couple big trees. Got a mesquite, and I'm not sure if this is an oak or what type of tree this is. But I'm looking for a water meter. Water meter is over there. Main water shutoff, I believe, is over on this side. So your main water line runs underneath this tree, the sidewalk. So if there's any problems with the main water line, you might have some issues in the driveway. Main plumbing clean out. There should be 2 of them. There usually is 2 of them. I'm not certain which way it goes. Yeah, with the roots around this area from this tree really raised everything up. I'm sure that other clean out is probably right there. Try and get access to that before we go. Uh-oh. Those foundation cracks. Yeah, you get some minor stem wall cracks right there by the garage. It's a corner crack. There's a little bit of displacement in this area. So somebody calling this out is probably going to want to see a patch. This doesn't require like a complete foundation repair, but at very minimum a patch or maybe an epoxy injection to prevent that crack from getting any worse. It'll definitely be called out on the home inspection report though. We talked about proper kick-out flashing up on the roof. We just don't have it right there. It should be an angled piece that shoots the water out this way instead of pushing it right into the stucco. Window in the front of the property. A little bit of plastic trim shrinkage around those corners. We call those out because water can get in there and cause problems. Window repair company can clean them up and get them back to looking original like that. So doing a water pressure test here at your main water line coming in. That's your main water shutoff. Your pressure pushing 60. This thing does leak a little bit. But yeah, we're right in between 60 and 70, which is good. That's what we like to see. Should have anti-siphon hose bibs at every hose bib just for code reasons. Anti-siphon device for the irrigation system. Looks good. Thing is, we do call these out if they're installed after the shutoff. Like your other house that we looked at yesterday, this is considered against code. We would put that valve up here, so if you leave town, you can still run your irrigation system. So this might be called out. A little bit of paint peeling over here on the east side where the condensate drains for one of the HVAC units. I like that you got it away from the foundation. That'll stop a lot of that, but they might want this repainted. Condensate line up there looks good. This is kind of the area we were seeing ants. A little dent in the garage door right there. Looking for at least 2 inches of visible foundation so we can find termites. If you don't have at least 2 inches, we call that out. The road on the west side of the home now. Stem wall looks pretty good right there. Gas entry into the house. Got a bollard in place to protect that. I like that. It's a great idea. Gas valve there with the regulator. Bonding for the electrical system. Ooh, there's a rabbit. Okay. Surprise. Let's take a look at the electrical panel. Some inspectors, some electricians are going to call this out for being too close. You need 3 feet of access. I wouldn't necessarily pull this out until you asked me. 200 amp main service panel. Shut off is right there. I don't see any indications of termite treatment in the panel. This conduit that's run up for this electrical, probably for the irrigation system. There's a gap right there, so we don't want pests to get in there. If that could be sealed up, that'd be great. It looks like it's all copper. You don't see any aluminum wiring here. No antioxidant paste, it's all copper. Those look good. There's a lot of wires down here, a lot of stuff that just kind of pushed in here, but it does look pretty clean. I don't see any white wires going into the circuit breakers. I don't see any double taps. Arc fault breakers. Those 3 circuits. Looks good. Everything seems to be labeled correctly in the panel. You might have some questions about the pool filter pump, pool light, waterfall pump. You know, those were installed at a later date, so it's maximizing your panel. If anybody wants to add any extra in the future, they're going to have to upgrade the panel or get another panel or a sub panel, because this 200 amp service panel is completely full. We're also going to check the circuit, 30 amp for the AC1, 40 amp for AC2. We're going to double check those with the units in the backyard. Having the sidewalk, underside of the sidewalk visible means we're possibly going to undermine this, so we need to create some type of bevel so water can run away from that area. If water starts draining underneath that sidewalk, we're going to have settlement and shifting. That right there might be called out as a trip hazard. We're on the side of the home now, garage side. Looking around the foundation. Foundation looks good. I had moisture there coming from the wall. Something was leaking down the wall and the water got behind the paint on the top side of that stem wall. That's why it's all bowed out like that. So maybe you had a roof leak up there. Maybe there was a water leak inside the wall. Maybe some of this pool equipment was spraying that foundation right there, but that'll get called out for excessive moisture here. And that's the start of your horizontal crack here. That's because that rebar inside the foundation is starting to expand. It looks like it's been painted, sealed in, so they might not bring too much of attention to this, but it is something to be aware of. And nowadays we're always recommending that these get covered with plastic covers. I wouldn't update it until they ask you. Usually they don't get accepted, but it is better practice to have those big ugly plastic things over the top of them. Some of this plumbing looks a bit older. It's an older system. What are you gonna say? Backwash valve is broken here. Busted off. Things are pretty well labeled. We like to see everything labeled just to know that you can control it if you need to. This looks like an old aerator, you know, that got disconnected. None of this is supported. All you have to do is bump that and this whole thing shakes, so that'll probably be called out because there's no support. You know, that's a lot of weight when you fill that full of water to be vibrating around. You don't want anything to come loose. Jacuzzi, variable speed pump. Got good bonding on this one. And your bonding clamp fell off on this motor. See this little screw right there? That needs to go. Well, this is how it is supposed to be. It fell off that motor. That's a safety issue that'll definitely get written up. This conduit, they don't want to see that exposed. It'd be great if we could run this all the way up to the box. Put a little extension on there and get it all the way up there. Even if there's a little gap, it's better than having this sit out like this. These are those soffit vent holes that are being plugged by some of your insulation up in the attic. See that screen material in there? So if I can't see air light or air daylight from the attic space, that means those are plugged with insulation. I got up in there. Some caulking. So somebody just came along and caulked those gaps. That's good. If there's any gaps in those rafter soffit areas, they should be filled in with caulking and painted. Kickout flashing. Looks good. No power on that outlet down there. See anything in there? There's a open junction box in here that needs a cover plate.
Okay.
Another thing I wanted to point out is ventilation. On the side of the home here, really good idea, William. Cover those up. That's kind of a crazy thing. You might explain that to the buyer why those are covered up. I'm sure the home inspector is going to question why those have covers, but hopefully you can figure it out with the scupper up there. So looking back here, the foundation wall, we talked about that in this area. Now the sidewalk, it's really shifted around this tree. They might want you to do something about the tree, or at least fix these trip hazards. Anytime that's over about a 1/4 inch tall, that's a trip hazard. Your pergola is no bueno. They're going to write that up almost immediately for a safety issue. They might not even inspect the spa, if there is one here at that time, until they get that replaced. You can see the water on the bottom of the fence out there. Now that's old water damage. Pool looks great today. The vessel, didn't see any issues. Your auto float valve was working. Skimmer box was working. Put some caulking underneath the coping. That's this area right between the water and the bottom of this. You want to make sure that area is sealed up. There's a couple spots that were kind of not good, that if you lowered the water about a foot or so, you could really get a good look underneath there. It's called the coping. I'm going to get sealant put all the way around the perimeter here. There's a little bit of cracking underneath that rock too. Right at the bottom of that rock, we want to get some type of sealant in there, just so water doesn't seep out of the pool and create some settlement on that side of the pool. Talking to Bill about the moisture back here, you can see the moisture. You can see the moisture on the wall and the trim in this bedroom right in the corner. So if you don't get that cleaned up on that trim work on the inside, it might get called out for water staining. Home inspectors always write up these windows that are covered with sunscreens because we can't actually see the exterior of the window. We're looking at some of the areas where they've patched up the corners. One's open, one's been fixed, one hasn't been fixed. It's just plastic trim that needs to be repaired. Starting to see the weather stripping bow out just a little bit there. Not bad. Gable roof, gable ventilation. HVAC systems were both working awesome today. 2019 on them, just a few years. Everything was sealed up around there. Didn't see any issues. You want to keep the vegetation at least 5 feet above this away. Any branches that come above this, at least for 5 feet, should be trimmed back. You can see William's starting to work on the trimming back of the tree here, which is great. Just make sure this stuff doesn't touch the home. I didn't see any termites today. Doesn't mean they're not hiding somewhere where I can't see inside of the garage where there's a lot of stuff. When all that stuff inside the garage gets moved, I would take a good look at the walls. Make sure you don't see any tubes. Grading and drainage is another kind of important aspect that is probably going to be brought up by the next homeowner, because there's no adequate grading away from the backyard here where water goes around. And even William told me this water pools up pretty good here and over there. So because we can see the ground, it looks really flat. And home inspectors call that out because we want to see grading going around the property on both sides, directing water this way. There should be a swale, which is just a depression. It leads all your water up through that drain right there. That's our drain for the backyard. There's 2 of them, one on this side, one on the other side. There's no drains in the backyard. Fence, none on the back wall. So don't expect any water to drain out that way. You just have to bring that dirt level up to where we can't see the bottom of the concrete anymore, and the water will get away from that. The last thing we want is water to go underneath the sidewalk. That'll create unsettlement areas, or it'll create settlement and unstable areas where the concrete is going to sink in.